Hey everybody, how's it going? Today I'm going to be talking about Venom, Let There Be Carnage. It's about 12 o'clock here after I just got out of the Thursday night screening. Venom 2 was just released in theaters and it stars Tom Hardy, Michelle Williams, and Woody Harrelson. This movie is a sequel to the 2018 movie Venom. This movie is about Venom and Eddie Brock having to deal with Cletus Cassidy, a serial killer who has a symbiote, an alien creature like Venom embedded in him, which ultimately becomes Carnage. I gotta say, I liked the first movie. If you look at my review on my channel, I gave it a +2, which translates something around a 7 out of 10. I liked the first movie. It was entertaining. It wasn't perfect, but it was enjoyable. I hate to say it, but this movie was a major disappointment. Before I get into my major gripes with it, I'd like to talk about what's good with the movie, because there are some good parts. Just like in Venom 1, Tom Hardy delivers a really good performance as Eddie Brock. He is one of the highlights of the movie. He's generally very good in this movie. The one thing I would say about his character is it does seem very different from what we saw in Venom 1. It does not seem like the same character, which is a small gripe, but overall Tom Hardy still does a really good job in this movie, and he's definitely one of the standouts in this movie. In this movie, there's also some pretty good action. There are some times where I feel like we're cutting away from it too much, where we're cutting away from the Venom versus Carnage fights too much. But when they're on screen, it's definitely good action. I would say comparable, if not better, than Venom vs. Riot in the first movie. There's also surprisingly good visual effects and motion capture. I mean, it's not that surprising considering Andy Serkis directed this movie. He played Gollum. He's done so many motion capture things over the years. He's great at visual effects, motion capture. That was one of the standout things of this movie. The visual effects and the motion capture were all very good. There was also a surprisingly good performance by the detective in the movie, who's trying to work with Eddie Brock to figure out sort of what's going on with Cletus Cassidy, played by Stephen Graham. He gives a solid performance in this movie, and he was a surprising standout that I didn't expect going into it. Unfortunately, as much as this movie tries, that's most of the good things I can say about it. Continuing on with performances, Woody Harrelson, he generally gave a good performance, but it tended to be uneven. There were certain scenes where he felt very unbelievable as this character, and in certain scenes he was good, but in certain scenes he wasn't, and it was a sort of will they, won't they throughout the whole movie, whether he would give a good performance or just a mediocre one. Once again, I talked about this in my Venom 1 review video a few days ago, but Michelle Williams just seems weird in this role. She has a bigger part in this movie. In Venom 1, she wasn't really, you could kind of take her out of the movie and it wouldn't change too much. In this movie, she's a little more central to the plot. However, she's not at all the same character we saw her as in Venom. And there's not really a reason that she changes. Most of the characters in this movie don't seem at all the same, and I don't understand why. It doesn't seem like they're the same characters at all, and there's no real motivation for these changes. Something really weird about this movie that wasn't the case in the first movie is that Venom's voice is really different and it doesn't make sense. A lot of the time he sounds the exact same as in Venom 1, but sometimes Venom has a British accent. And I get that Tom Hardy doesn't traditionally have an American accent, but it doesn't really make sense because in the first movie, I don't remember any sort of British sounding dialogue, but here he sounds British at times, and it's really weird because most of the time he sounds like a more Americanized accent, but sometimes like he talks like in a British way. It's very weird, it's very odd, and I don't really understand why that was happening. One of my biggest critiques with the first Venom is that it took forever to get to Venom. In this movie, it takes forever to get to Carnage. Because I watched it in theaters, I can't gauge the exact time, but it felt like over half the runtime until we really got Carnage in there. And it was even less than that we got to see Venom and Carnage duke it out. It just felt like way too much waiting. Another thing I said in my Venom 1 review was that it was surprisingly well written. The dialogue felt good. It didn't feel awkward like I thought a lot of Hollywood movies did today. This movie felt really awkward. There were a lot of things that just didn't work. It just didn't feel, it didn't flow. It felt weird. Now, earlier I talked about how the action was good. However, there are some issues with the action too. In some scenes where Carnage isn't with Venom, he has a lot of really vast powers. He seems like he's more powerful than Venom in almost every way. However, when Carnage and Venom are fighting, he still has these powers, but they don't really seem to faze Venom. Throughout Carnage and Venom fighting, Carnage seems to be more powerful than Venom, but his additional weapons, his additional powers don't seem to be the reason why. He just seems to be arbitrarily better. Just like I said with Venom, this movie would have definitely been better rated R. I understand that they want to appeal to the PG-13 audience, but with Venom and Riot, it was understandable. Carnage is a really gory character though, and I feel like it was a disservice to him to make it into a PG-13 rating. It just didn't feel right. Now, while Tom Hardy did a good performance as Eddie Brock, the relationship in the story between Eddie and Venom is really weird. Sometimes they try to do like a buddy thing. Sometimes it seems like they're an old married couple. It doesn't really flow very well. I can't tell what they're trying to do with their relationship. It just feels very weird and awkward. There's also a new character in this movie named Shriek, and she's sort of Cletus Cassidy's one ray of hope. But throughout the movie, she makes some decisions that don't make sense. They're kind of dumb, and it doesn't really make sense why she makes those decisions. You have to see what I'm talking about in the movie to know what I'm talking about, but there's some decisions she makes that just don't make sense and don't really seem like they would actually be decisions anyone would make in those situations. Another thing I have to say about this movie is it has a really weird score. The first movie had a score by Ludwig Göransson, who did the music for Black Panther, The Mandalorian. He's a fantastic composer. With this movie, the score feels just weird. It feels like a Tim Burton score. It's very oddball-y, and it doesn't fit. It really affects the tone of the movie. I feel like the tone of Venom 2 is totally different than Venom 1. It doesn't feel like it was a sequel to the movie. And I'm okay with a sequel feeling different than the first movie, but it doesn't feel better in a good way. It just feels weird, and it doesn't work at all for me. Another thing I have to mention is the movie is always trying to be funny. Venom 1 had some really funny moments, but it kept a darker tone throughout a lot of the movie. This movie is always trying to crack a joke, and you can never take any scene seriously because they're always trying to joke about things. And even this, I would be okay with. Think about Thor Ragnarok, right? Thor and Thor 2 are serious movies, but Thor 3 is really funny, and I love it, and I think it's the best Thor movie. But here, I don't even feel like the jokes are funny. I laughed at maybe one or two of them. They make so many. It felt like they were doing a Deadpool level of joking, and barely any of them landed for me. However, even with all of that, I think my biggest problem with the film is it feels so aimless. It feels like the movie should have either been 45 minutes long or 2 hours long. It feels like they had about 45 minutes of a story, and then they stretched it out into about an hour 30-minute movie. This movie is only an hour 30 minutes with credits. It's an hour and 20-minute runtime with 10 minutes of credits. It felt like they had about 30 to 45 minutes of a good story, and then they just added weird plot lines in it that weren't necessary and didn't affect what happened after those plot lines. I think of Venom 1 as mindless fun. It's a fun movie to just go and watch, right? It's action. It's not perfect, but it's a fun watch. That movie was mindless. That movie was fun, it was sort of mindless. This movie is aimless. I never felt like it was getting anywhere until it was at those scenes. And once it was at those scenes weren't even that good. When it comes to movies, I'm not a hard guy to please. It's very rare that I would give a movie this much of a panning. It just didn't work for me in so many levels. And again, I liked Venom 1. Venom 1 was a fun movie. There's barely any movies I would ever give this mark to. But Venom 2 just, to me, had so many issues. So I hate to say this, but I have to give Venom Let There Be Carnage a -1. The link is in the description, by the way, for my rating system explained. Well, let me know. I've heard a lot of different conflicting things about Venom Let There Be Carnage. Let me know if you disagree. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you have any different thoughts about the movie. Let me know in the comments section down below. I would really appreciate it if you went and hit the like button and subscribe for more videos. Very soon in the future, I got The Guilty with Jake Gyllenhaal review coming up tomorrow. No Time to Die coming very soon after that, and then Dune later in the month. So I've got a lot of reviews coming up soon. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.